Yeah, I as you can see, I kind of tried to clown it up a little bit for the circus theme for you.
I love it. You look beautiful.
Thank you. So do you. Congratulations on a long overdue All-Stars win.
Thank you so much. It's been so wild and so exciting.
So I've been following you since I guess the first one was Canada, right? Was it season
That's
one
right.
of Canada in the middle of the
Season
pandemic?
one. That's
So
right.
one thing that caught my eye when I was a fan of you on that show was it's a weird question to start with, but hopefully it's a question no one else has asked you. The shot by shot remake of Video Kills the Radio Star. I'll have you know, I just very recently interviewed Trevor Horn, the
Oh
Buggles,
my God.
and I told him about it.
Oh, really?
He
What
didn't
did he
know about it.
say?
He wasn't aware, but because we were obviously talking about the Buggles and that video. But no, I let him know and told him to go check it out. But
Oh,
I
thank
need to
you.
talk to you about that. Like, I mean, it was exactly like the original. What inspired that?
Well, that was working with Studio 549, my neighbors up here in Victoria. They're on the top floor of my building here. That was coming out of the pandemic. We were trapped inside of our basically in our houses, and I had competed on the show, and we were putting that out as sort of like here's our first kind of showing of us out to the world. So I really wanted, I was an unknown queen. I had gone on Drag Race. I had my time there. I hadn't been received by the world yet, so I was still kind of like feeling a little bit some kind of way about how it all went and really eager
Mm.
about, seeing how the world was going to react because I obviously felt one way going into the show and then had my experience and really left the show going, what the fuck? And so it was really
Along with much of the
right.
audience,
And so
myself.
once the audience was on my side and I go, "Oh my God, I'm not crazy." That was so amazing. And then I really wanted to, that I was an underdog at that point and I felt like I really needed to show the world that I had a point of view and that I had a voice and that I had a cool community that I work with. And so that video, I wanted to not focus so much on being hyper feminine in the typical drag way. I wanted to, be a little bit clowny and be a little bit weird and to show that side of my drag and then also to pay homage to a cool old song that I love. I kind of always love when I'm performing or doing my show. I always kind of like to pick a weird song or a weird influence that people might not hear
Was it
usually.
hard to recreate that video? Because I did, like I said, I talked to Trevor Horn about it. We talked a little bit about the video. Because videos back then, that video was actually made in like I think 1979, like even before MTV
Mm,
came out. And it looks very arts and crafts. It's like cheerfully
right.
cheap, it looks
Yeah.
cheap, but in like a good way. Is that like the
Right.
aesthetic? Is that what made you want to do that video?
I think so too. Yeah, it was like, that I love that idea that that was the first video put out on MTV, and kind of that was one of my first videos that I was kind of putting out to kind of show myself. And yeah, I love that DIY aesthetic. I live on an island of artists, it's Vancouver Island, it's off the west coast of Canada, and we're kind of known for having to make our own fun, make our own vibe, create fun for ourselves and each other. And that video definitely has that aesthetic of kind of a bunch of artists getting together and kind of using their strength to kind of create an elevated performance. So thank you.
So, of course, I was obviously, you can see I like the 80s aesthetic. I was super stoked when I stumbled upon that video. So, obviously that was a new wave classic. New wave comes from punk, descends from punk. So, I'd love to talk a little bit about, I hope I'm getting the quote right, but RuPaul basically said you're proof that punk's not dead, which is
Yeah.
pretty awesome because I actually moderated a panel about the connection between drag and punk at DragCon a few years ago with Henry
Oh,
Rollins on the panel, which was
amazing.
intimidating as hell. You would have been great on it. I'd
Yeah, I would have
love
loved that.
I'd love to talk to you about that comment, but like, how you feel connection to punk. I think you definitely have a punk aesthetic in everything you do.
Thank you. Well, yeah, I was so happy when Rue said that to me. That's as an artist and someone, when you're kind of putting yourself out there, and especially in front of someone like RuPaul, who's an icon of mine, you want to be seen for how you feel on the inside, and also for things you're not necessarily overtly saying. And so it was such an honor for Ru to pick up on those bits of my history and those bits of what make me a drag performer and a performance artist, and to say it was just so awesome. And there is that punk aesthetic in drag, just because it's all about non-conforming, and it's all about pushing boundaries, and it's all about being an artist and an individual, and saying fuck you to a system and creating new pathways. And all of that is what's interesting about being an artist, and what's interesting about drag, and especially drag right now. It's very, I'm going to be me, and I'm going to do me in the face of, people saying that's bad or wrong. And then you have the encouragement and all the people around you, who kind of feel that vibe and say, yeah, we're with you. And I love that.
Well, obviously, RuPaul, I'm sure most people watching this will know that, he was in a punk band, Wee Wee Pull, when he was, before he was famous. And, but it's interesting because there's been this debate. I talked about it with other queens from the show. I talked about it on that Drag is Punk panel, obviously, is the bigger drag has gotten, a lot of that has been because of Drag Race. The more mainstream it's gotten, you know, some people sort of miss when it was a little more underground, and like, you talk about potentially offending people. Now it seems like drag's a little like it's a double-edged sword. It's great that drag is more mainstream now, but at the same time, it's like now it's a little more PC, and you
Right,
obviously don't seem to really care about being PC
right.
as much. So it's like more old school. So like, can you talk a little bit about that? Because sometimes people get bent out of shape over what you do.
Yeah, they do. And I think that's all part of it. Yeah, I think that drag is just a mirror in a lot of ways. And it's a mirror for ourselves when we look at art, and when we look at drag, whatever we kind of feel is a reflection of what we've been raised on, and culture and society and all those things. And that's kind of the beauty of drag, is kind of, you are and you will do as you are as the artist, and people are going to absorb that, and they're going to respond to it in however many ways they're going to do that. And being able to withstand that and still be true to yourself, that's punk rock. To go like, you know what, I hear you and I see you, but this is me, and I'm going to be me. And so yeah.
Well, my first memory of a drag queen or hearing that term was divine. So obviously I associate it with being a little bit more of a pushing the
Mm.
boundaries of good taste sort of thing. What was your first experience, either witnessing drag or doing it yourself?
Well, my first time seeing drag was I think growing up with RuPaul on TV, and Tu Wong Fu, and those exposures to drag. I was always kind of curious about drag, and beautiful things, shiny things, all those girly things that, as a boy in the 80s, I was told, I had to like the color blue, and I had to like GI Joes, and I had to play with boys. And I liked pink, I wanted Barbies, and I wanted to be with the girls and all those things. So
What was your first experience doing drag? Let's
okay, right. So my first experience is doing drag. I used to do drag with my brother. We'd steal my mom and my grandma's clothes and my mom's makeup. We'd hide in my basement in a room that was called the dungeon. It was this kind of forgotten room filled with family shit. And we would hide down there, and we would get our life and live our fantasy, and just have fun twirling in clothes, and doing that, something that was bad and a secret. And we'd have to hide from my dad, who was
Mm.
terrified that he had two gay sons, because my brother's also gay. And so that was my first taste of feeling flowy. And my mom put makeup on my face, and I was maybe about 5 or something. And I remember just looking in the mirror saying, oh my God, mommy, I'm beautiful. And she said, yes, you are, baby. And, ever since that, I had sort of a fascination around beauty, and then being a little rebel, and, being who I am. When you're told, that's not for you, or no, you shouldn't like that, it kind of makes it extra exciting. And so, I used to hide and do my makeup, and all those things that you know, as I became a teenager, became horrifying. If my mom ever brought up to my high school friends or anything that I loved dressing and in my mom's clothing, that was a mortifying. I would just, you know, absolutely die. And it wasn't until after high school, when I was in university in an artist crowd and started performing and being a clown, that I allowed myself to start, you know, performing in drag and letting that side of myself back in and giving myself permission to do all that. And that took a long time. And so the first performance in drag was me performing as my evil ex stepmother. I performed this character called Karen, and it was a bouffant, twisted version of my evil ex stepmother who had tortured me.
Oh
And
no.
so it was very cathartic and very fun and wild and twisted. And the people at the show were like, that was so fucked up and amazing. And you know, that was my first kind of taste of it. And then slowly through my clowning and through allowing myself to try to be a bit more beautiful and glamorous, did I start kind of moving in kind of a beauty kind of drag way, away from kind of more clowny drag. And then obviously when I went into Canada's Drag Race, I had still some beauty things to learn, and everyone happily told me. And so, because of all of those critiques, you know, I was able to kind of learn more about makeup and then polish myself up and then lean more into beauty, which I really love now.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, when we were talking about the whole punk thing, and also when you were talking, when we started talking about the Buggles parody you did, you said you didn't want to have it be like a super hyper feminine way. And obviously, I'm
No,
sure you've been asked about this before, but you know, for the record, I don't agree with this. I don't understand the logic here, but you have gotten some flack, I guess, for, well, I guess for the breastplate more than anything, or for being an exaggerated, they think you've actually been literally accused of like making fun of women or being misogynistic when I've never, like I said, I come from the school of watching Divine. I've never thought of drag as like sort of being like trying to pass as a woman or being like a female impersonator per se. But
right.
where does that sort of school of thought come from, that like this exaggerated hyper clowny thing is somehow insulting? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that that's, you know, drag and clowning is about being a mirror. And so, you know, when I talk to people, when you really talk to someone that has a problem with that, what you'll end up finding is that they themselves have experienced some sort of trauma or something where they have not been celebrated for whatever you're being celebrated for. And
Mm,
so what I've heard from people is when they look at my drag, and specifically that version of my drag, and they're triggered, it's usually because they have had some sort of trauma or something in their lives that's lent them to have a negative response to what I'm doing. And, you know, at the same time, there is so much positive response to people going, that is a celebration of self. That is somebody going against gender norms and social norms to live their own authentic self. And that's at the root of it. I'm an artist, and bodies are bodies, and people are people, and there are all kinds of ideas of feminine and masculine, and the whole idea of drag is to play with those things and to try things on. And it's all also about intention. What is your intention as a performer or an artist when you're trying these things on? And my intention is to live my best life and to enjoy myself while sharing something that I absolutely love, which is drag, femininity, all those things, those, and also playing with those ideas of size and proportion and femininity. And I'm a clown, so I like bigger, I like size, I like proportion, and I'm also a 6 foot tall guy. That's, you know, there's proportions that you need to do to exaggerate to get all of those ways that I like expressing myself. And so I think that when it's from a point of view, when the point of view is authentic, when it's individual, and when it's artistic, that's where I know I'm coming from. And so that's why I continue to be who I am. And the people that receive it and put their own negative connotations on what I'm doing, that's a reflection of their experience. And that's totally valid, and that's totally their experience. And all I can say is watch another drag queen. Watch someone else do something different. There's nothing I could do. I'm not going to stop being who I am because there's people that want me to be some other version. It's, I need to express myself, and I certainly hope that people will express themselves in whatever way is true to them, as long as they're not hurting anyone, and as long as they're not, harming anyone. That if you're making someone think, then that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sort of all goes back to, the stuff I was saying about how I kind of times think, drag was supposed to be a bit provoking or provocative or push buttons a little bit. And then, sometimes people argue that it's swung a little bit more PC, that people would, react to a breastplate like that. But if we're talking about trauma, you mentioned something about your father and your ex stepmother. Like, how have you used drag, particularly the type of aesthetic that you've used, to process your own trauma? That's a thing that's a recurring theme on all the Drag Race, with
Sure.
all the cast members.
Yeah, well, trauma is all about how you deal with it and how you pick yourself up and how you move on. And I've had a lot of pain and sadness in my life, but I've had so much joy and opportunity and awesomeness. And I am so grateful and lucky to be able to laugh at my hardships in life and to try my best to learn from them and to weave them into my story so that other people can learn and benefit from whatever I've been through, and how I process that through my art. But yeah, I think there's all kinds of things in life that happens to us that you can be crushed by, or you can be devastated by, or you can learn to accept them and weave them into your art and deal with them through art. And so yeah, that's what I've tried to do as a performance artist. And that's when you have a deeper, richer life experience, you're able to kind of access those emotions and go to those places for your audience as a performer, and you can feel on the stage all of that experience and all of that truth and all of that, which is the root of performance and clowning, is in connection with your audience. And the more real you are about who you are, the more you're going to connect with your audience, which is all people just like you and I. We're all very much alike.
The whole idea of clowns are scary. When we're talking about trauma, a lot of people are terrified of clowns. What makes you gravitate toward clowns? Did you have good or bad experiences as a child, with clowning? There are people who have like literal phobia of clowns. Like they'd be scared of what I have on right now.
Right. Yeah, there there are people that are afraid of clowns, and I think it's, people are just afraid of, maybe trusting in the goodness of a clown. I'm not quite sure why clowns are scary. I am not afraid of clowns. I love clowns. I especially love things that are meant to be beautiful or happy, that through the process of painting or whatever it is, they become creepy time. There's something so kind of funny to me about vintage clown art, and how that the ideas of how people decorated their homes, and I think we all had friends or family that had that sort of creepy clown painting in their house that was meant to be fun and beautiful, but somehow they've got a crooked smile or a droopy eye, and all of a sudden they become really creepy. So I don't know. I like that. Maybe that's just the twisted side of me. But clowns in their nature are not scary. It's all about just being real, and sometimes that's scary. Sometimes it's scary because clowns are all about allowing you to see them, and allowing clowns to see you, because that's how you have a conversation through an audience. Clowns are usually silent. You're kind of usually, it's physical, and it's usually intense because you are connected with a performer who you usually don't know. So that's where a lot of beauty and surprise happens, because you're allowing each other to see each other in that moment, and you're engaging in a conversation through performance, and it's vulnerable and it's exciting.
Did you ever have a clown experience as a child, like a good one or a bad one, that sort of like was a core memory that ended up influencing your aesthetic later or making you think of the clown vibe?
Well, I think, Pee Wee Herman in a lot of ways was a clown. And, that when I go back and I watch Pee Wee's Playhouse and I look around my own house, I collect those, chatter teeth. And, I have a lot of, when I look in the set, I have mimic of that kind of art or aesthetic in my own home. And I think that Pee Wee, was a kind of a clown in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
and very silly, very kind of emotionally available and spontaneous, and was a huge influence on me, and both in the aesthetic and in the performance. Yeah.
Big Adventure is my favorite movie of all time. That's why I went like
Yeah.
this. When
Right.
didn't you post something when he passed? You posted a tribute, I believe, when he am I
I have no idea. I hope I did. I,
well,
I
you
haven't. Yeah. I love Pee Wee, and he was instrumental in inspiring me. So
well, speaking of controversy or whatever, but I have to know what kind of reaction you got when honestly one of the best things that ever happened in the history of Drag Race, the Shirley Temple. Like everyone loved that. But was there
mm,
anyone who was like, this is blasphemous, how can you, Shirley Temple is a Hollywood icon. She's a child or was a child. Like, what was
right.
the reaction to that? Because that was one of the best and most twisted things ever on there.
Thank
I'm
you.
laughing just thinking about it. Like you made was it Candy Muse? You made Candy Muse break character.
Uh-huh. Yeah, she cracked and she was just laughing her ass off. I love that moment. That was another moment where I didn't really, practice that. I didn't even know I was going to tap dance. I kind of went out right before I was going on. I said, "Get me those tin can lids from that making challenge a few weeks ago." I strapped those on my feet, and um, I kind of just made it all up on the spot. I had practiced once before with my clown coach out of costume, out of character, and it wasn't really working. It was just, I think I kind of learned in that moment what wasn't going to work. So when I did it, luckily it all just came together and has become iconic. But yeah, in that moment, I was just channeling that sort of faded starlet that's kind of clung to that youthful fame. There's something so funny, like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. I love that movie. There's something so tragic and intriguing about a child star that never outgrows their childhood frame. And so there was just so much to play with in terms of making faces and a history, and also you want to, when you're doing a snatch game, you want to choose a character that people know but don't know too much about, so that people go, oh, okay, I can kind of fill in the blanks about what to expect, and then you can fuck with those expectations because they don't really know much about who that person is. So
Absolutely. I assume that the tour you're about to go on is going to have a Shirley Temple number. I want like the full on good ship lollipop experience.
yeah.
What can we expect?
Yeah, for my show, I come back. I bring Shirley Temple back. She has been traveling the world. She's a hip hop star now. She's rebranded. She's Sweet Tea, and so it's a really funny number. I'm really excited about. And the whole show, I play 6 characters, and I did the set design with my friend Marshall, and I wrote the music with my friend Andrew, and my clown teacher Britt Small has done the direction. So it's me and some of my closest friends got together to put on this awesome show, and I'm going to play all the characters, and so it's going to be really, really fun.
You have a clown teacher?
Yeah, my clown teacher Britt Small, she's also a director I like to work with here in Victoria. She founded the performance company Atomic Vaudeville, which I got my start in, and so I brought her onto the project as the director to kind of help um, in the workshop phase.
I gotta ask, what does a clown lesson with, you know, an expert student like yourself, star pupil entail?
Well, clowning is all about being really present, and it's all about throwing away your expectations of what you're going to do and being open to the possibilities of what could happen in that moment. And I love that about clowning. I Part of a barrier for performance before I became a clown was this idea that you have to conceive of everything before time, then you need to rehearse that until it's perfect, and then you need to present that perfectly rehearsed thing that you've decided these are all the funny parts, and then you're going to put it out there and everyone's going to laugh when you thought they're going to laugh, and it's all going to go just the way you planned it. And that's to me, I couldn't figure that out. I was like, I'm not very planful, and I like to just kind of show up, make a look, live my best life, and clowning is all about that. Clowning is all about showing up, allowing yourself to be seen, and going with kind of your worst idea in the moment, and just kind of getting your life and listening to your audience. And so that's why I just love clowning, and that's what's drawn me into it.
Absolutely, because if you'd overthought, I was so surprised that you said that you didn't really rehearse or plan that Shirley Temple thing, but perhaps if you had, it wouldn't have been as hilarious as it
Yeah,
was in the
yeah.
moment.
And the same was with my Joan Rivers on the show. The first time I did Joan in the Snatch game, I had never done that before. I had just done Joan Rivers in my just for the audition because they said you have to pick someone. I said, okay, well, I can do this Joan voice. So that was kind of all the magic and all the fun of both those performances. Is just kind of like I just let it ride and kind of act crazy and see what happens. And so yeah, I'm grateful it worked out.
Will you do a Joan number in your upcoming tour?
Yeah, I bring Joan Rivers back. She does some stand up and a big number with the backup dancers. She kind of is a fallen angel number.
And will there be a Buggles number? Will there be a big
Oh,
Video Killed the Radio Star finale, at least in Los
I
Angeles?
wish. That's a good idea. I wish I had thought of that. That would have been awesome.
Well, maybe for the next one. In the meantime, I'm very excited about to see the tour when it comes here to LA. What else, before I let you go, do you have going on?
Well, that's pretty much it. This world tour, writing this
Or-
show, getting this world tour going, and putting out the music. Andrew Fields and I have written a whole score for this show, so
Oh,
I'd love to put
wow.
yeah, I would love to put the music out for this, and then also Andrew and I have written music together for the past several years, and we'll be on the road together in a tour bus, touring around. So I'm hoping that we're gonna write new music while I'm on the road, and I've got ideas for a TV show, and I've got my show House of Jimbo that I've been trying to get going for some time. So I'm going to keep working on that project, and yeah, keep putting myself out there.
Well, last question before I let you go, because I'm very intrigued about this music stuff. Do you see yourself going in the path of, say, Alaska or Adore Delano or Jinx? There's a handful of drag queens that have put out music, and it's not just like a club track to lip sync to, but like actual like full albums where they sing and
Hmm.
it's original music. Like, do you see yourself going down that way?
Yeah, yeah, I'm a storyteller and I love singing, so it just kind of makes sense that those kind of go hand in hand. And so yeah, I really would love to put out more music and make more music videos.
I'm gonna have call up Trevor Horn, see if he can produce you.
Yes. Oh my God.
Stranger
Thank
things
you.
have happened. You never know.
Pull some strings.
In the meantime, it was really lovely speaking with you. Thank you for taking the time, and I'm looking forward to your show.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. It was so fun being on here with you, and I love your look today. Thank you for bringing out your clown for me.
I got to clown around when I'm with the best. I feel like I went to clown school today. So thank you so much.
Yay, my pleasure.
Thanks.